Our next panel includes voices from industry, professions, and academia on innovative technologies to rapidly reduce carbon emissions with a focus on serving disadvantaged communities. Please welcome Marianne Piette, Director of the Building Technology and Urban Systems Division and Director of the Demand Response Research Center at Lawrence Berkeley Lab. She will moderate our session on Getting to Zero, Trends in the Built Environment. Marianne.
Thank you so much. It is so great to be here this morning. I've really enjoyed the event, and I want to thank the CITRIS leadership and all the folks that have participated so far in creating such an inspiring program. I'm going to introduce our panelists and get into the discussion about the building sector. We are in a critical time in the building sector. And after I introduce the panelists, I'll make a few comments to set the stage for the discussion. Sascha von Meier is a professor at UC Berkeley and a researcher that I've worked with for many years, doing fascinating work around the electric grid, doing something called synchrophasers, and I'll let her talk a little about what those are. And today she'll be talking a little about something called EcoBlock. An EcoBlock is a very unique urban microgrid being built in Oakland, and it gives us an idea about technology and challenges in implementing that technology for a net zero carbon world. Panama Bartholomy is a leader of electrification activities, and he is focused on decarbonization and both the technology and the policies and markets and how we're going to motivate people and get engaged in a large community of practice around this urgent issue on decarbonization. And Carrillo is with BlocPower, and BlocPower is one of the most novel building startups in the country who've been working on decarbonization and electrification and business models and doing things like financing the investment in these technologies. So we have research, we have policy and market leadership, and we have businesses here to help us lay the stage for inspiring the generation of both research and deployment activities. So let me make a few introductory comments about the sector and the challenges. In the last session, we heard about batteries and EVs. And it is fascinating when we think about buildings today. Buildings use about 40% of the energy use in the United States and 40% of the greenhouse gases, 70% of the grid. So today's electric grid is built to serve buildings. Of course, there's industry loads and EVs. What's fascinating is if we think about buildings as the place we all live and interact with. We go into buildings for comfort, for services, for education, and hopefully we're going to start to be seeing each other in person on campuses, and in all the organizations that we've heard that have been participating in this, national labs, and we now have buildings will be where a lot of the EV charging is taking place. So we have to really think about how the electric loads in buildings are changing, and how do we think about the investments and technologies to retrofit the buildings for a low carbon future. The panelists are going to be talking about how we think about what the most important technologies are and what their organization is doing and how they're trying to understand the barriers towards accelerating decarbonization and what their organization is doing to accelerate that. Because we have some idea of things about heat pumps and integrated systems, but the actual cost effectiveness in getting people engaged is a challenge. We will also be talking about disadvantaged communities, diversity, and energy justice and environmental justice, because we know that some communities can afford these technologies and are willing to invest. But one of the things all of us are involved in is how to make sure that we're making equitable investments in these technologies. We'll be talking a little about students and early career professionals and what the opportunities are for them. And we'll be talking about what we're most excited about. So each of us will have a chance to set the stage for helping to inspire the next generation of researchers and practitioners and business people to think about this energy agenda. So as we start, I'm going to start with Sascha, then Panama, and then Maria. And I will make a few additional comments about some of the things we're doing at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. We've been working on something called CalFlex Hub in California. The state of California is trying to require that the utilities publish electricity tariffs in a machine-readable XML form, a digital tariff. And we're trying to understand the technologies and how ready are they to receive a digital tariff. If we could have the electric systems that could actually listen to the grid signal and respond in real time, we could change the electric load and soak up and use more of that clean power when it's available and use less when the grid is dirtier. So we're doing a lot of work to try to create the ecosystem to accelerate that, working on communications and controls and working with technology partners. So that's one example of some of the things we're doing at Lawrence Berkeley Lab. And I look forward to today's discussion. And we're going to start with 3 to 5 minutes from each of them on answering that main question about what are the barriers that they're most interested in overcoming, and what are the kinds of things that they're doing to accelerate adoption of net zero energy technologies. So Sascha, I'll start with you.
Thanks so much, Marianne. How's my audio?
Sounds
All
great.
good? Great. So yes, stating the obvious, we can't just build new energy efficient, renewable oases of sustainability. We have to work with the building stock that we've got. We have to retrofit in a hurry. And it's overwhelming how many millions of structures there are. So the EcoBlock project is really testing the hypothesis of, is there perhaps a faster, a better, and a more equitable way of doing retrofits collectively with multiple buildings at a time? Really, it's about what might we get when we cross property lines and aggregate buildings together. At the individual structure level, what would we do to get to zero net carbon? Obviously, efficiency comes first, electrification to get rid of natural gas, as well as obviously electric vehicles, part of that electrification process, and renewables as much as we can local, and then hopefully all renewables from the grid as well. So that's the climate part. Now, if I do all that at my house, I may ask, well, what about resilience? Why don't I also add battery storage so that I can ride through a power outage, which with climate change in progress, power outages will likely, I think, become more commonplace despite all our best efforts. But, you know, if I put a Tesla Powerwall on my house, if I could afford that, that's really an exclusive kind of thing. It's one house being a power island at a time. Is there a way to share resources across multiple homes in a community to make it work, to meet essential needs during emergencies? Is it possible to bring solar and storage and resilience within financial reach for people who wouldn't be able to launch a whole home retrofit on their own with solar? So we're looking at, what's the best scale? Is there a sweet spot? Hypothetically, we're saying, what about a block? A city block is a unit that, you know, is replicated over and over, but you get some load diversity from, you know, on the order of several dozen homes or units together. Maybe there's an economy of scale in the design, working with contractors one block at a time, and certainly sharing battery capacity. So we're working with PG&E with a pilot block in Oakland to actually produce an islandable microgrid out of an existing legacy section of the distribution system. That addresses a lot of the challenges involved with distributed resources and reliability and resilience for the grid. There are technical issues that will increasingly come to the forefront with distributed generation, altering voltage profiles with electrification, EVs presenting a lot of load growth. So it's inevitable that we'll be spending money on power infrastructure. The question is, while we're at it, can we also make it more resilient and sectionalize it? So that during adverse events, local communities can ride through and support each other. Marianne mentioned the work with micro PMUs. Those are a piece of high precision sensing equipment for the electric grid to get better situational awareness. And what some of my group has been working on is also using those data for improved control strategies for batteries and solar inverters so that they can be good citizens on the grid. Some of the main technical barriers to recruiting these resources for the grid and allowing neighbors to share resources with each other. A key technical barrier is designing protection systems, making sure that the legacy protection still works, or adding to it so that when there's a short circuit or a fault somewhere on the system, there's not a dangerous condition. Power quality, making sure voltage levels stay within range, making sure that locally supply and demand are balanced. So being able to manage electric loads effectively is a really key piece of this, and we can do this today with smart panels. If we don't have, individual smart appliances, there are really many ways to solve this puzzle to prioritize electric demand and make it play nicely with the resources that are locally available. But I think the main barrier from the utility side is just having experience and having standards for the equipment that they're going to install and for the operating procedures to allow local pockets to operate independently when there's a power outage elsewhere in the system. Now, non-technical barriers also include tariffs. That's a big deal, and I could say much more about this. I think I should wrap up here in a minute, but there's presently no incentive for local resources to be aggregated and playing nicely together to support power quality on the distribution circuit. I think that that's a really important step. I mean, right now, it is still illegal to sell power across property lines. In fact, I think there's an opportunity for really accelerating the development of renewables and microgrids and resilience by interpreting those rules in a way that allow sharing of resources, not for profit, but really for emergency resilience. And then another non-technical challenge is governance, and how you develop structures that people can trust, that protects people's property and safety and interests, but that allows them to pool their resources together and work together. Having norms and standards for sharing power and sharing also the investment in the retrofits, making that accessible. So one great accomplishment of the EcoBlock so far is the incorporation of a new nonprofit community association on the block that can actually own these assets together.
That sounds like an amazing agenda, and I think that there's so much to do. You've outlined both the economy of scale question as well as the technical issues, and I want to emphasize that as we change our electric grid to more renewables, we need to change the buildings so that we can integrate our loads with a cleaner grid. So Panama, tell me a little about what you're doing with your work in decarbonization and electrification.
Sure. Thank you, Marianne. And it's always a challenge to follow Sascha because she deals with everything I do. And then she's also trying to deal with property rights on top of all that. So it's great to be here. I run an organization called the Building Decarbonization Coalition, and we're a coalition of utilities, manufacturers of heating equipment, the design and construction community, government agencies, and other nonprofits. And we all come together to try to eliminate pollution from buildings. Pollution generally comes from three different places in buildings. It's the electricity that's being provided to the building. It's the burning of gas on site, and then it's some emissions of refrigerants from air conditioners and anything else that uses refrigerants in your house. We do that through both policy mechanisms and through market mechanisms. And so we do a lot of work in Sacramento and in Albany over in New York, and then also working at the local level to try to get locals to adopt policies. But we also do a lot of work with just market players, bringing together manufacturers and the design and construction community and utilities to try to identify some common issues and then overcome them. And that's really at the heart of our effort and our belief structure, that there's no way that we're going to be able to accomplish our goal, excuse me, of completely eliminating emissions and pollution from buildings if we keep within our silos. If the utilities aren't talking to the manufacturers, aren't talking to the design and construction community, we're just not going to be able to get it done, much less on the time frame that we're trying to shoot for to reach our climate goals. And so to the answer of, what do we see as the major barriers that are holding us back? We've gone through a pretty extensive process to identify what we think are the top real 5 barriers about how it's just holding us back. Number one is awareness. By and large, there's little awareness that your home or the building that you work in is probably one of the largest contributors to climate change in your life. Policymakers aren't really aware of this. And so we need really widespread awareness about this to be increased. Number 2, there has to be a good customer value proposition. It's not going to make any sense if we're asking people to make more expensive choices that don't pay off in the operating of those choices. And so we need to be implementing policies that are able to reduce capital costs and be able to protect people on operating costs. Number 3, people need to be able to make money off of this. And we've done this well with solar. And that's why we've been able to build a really successful solar industry in California and across this country, because we designed early solar programs that allowed companies to be able to build sustainable business models. We've never done that for energy efficiency. And we need to learn the lesson of both solar and energy efficiency for building decarbonization so that we can allow businesses to actually build sustainable business models. Number 4, supply chains. And you heard it in the last panel that we're really struggling with supply chains. And the biggest issue we're struggling with building decarbonization and supply chains right now is sending a really clear message to them that we as California, as New York, as the United States are committed to decarbonization. And we want them to be shifting their production lines over towards the type of technologies that'll help us with decarbonization rather than hold us back. And so really clear messaging to manufacturing lines and supply chains is going to be critical. And then the last one is aligning policies. It's absolutely crazy that we are spending billions of dollars to electrify buildings, and at the same time spending billions of dollars on our affordable housing programs to build affordable housing projects with gas in them that are out of alignment with our climate laws. And so we need to have alignment across the board of our building code, our climate laws, our energy efficiency laws, et cetera. So it's those 5 things that we really think are the major barriers. And so the 3 briefly areas that we work on to overcome them are this. 1, we need to stop digging the hole any deeper. We need to make a decision about when we need to stop building with gas. The city of Berkeley in July of 2019 was the first city in the United States to make that decision, saying we are going to stop the construction of all new buildings with gas. And that has now spread to 56 other cities across California. Seattle, Denver, New York City, and others have followed Berkeley's lead in that effort. So we need to stop digging the hole any deeper. Number 2, we need to make a decision about when we're going to stop selling the very appliances that contribute pollutants that make it impossible for us to meet our goals. And so we need to set a phase out date for the sale of gas appliances here in California and across the country. And then number 3, we need to implement policies to build a sustainable marketplace for electrification so that we're actually sending a signal to the market that this is what we're building. And you need to go through the changes within your business models and your companies to be able to join us on this path, and it's going to be profitable for you. So we need to build a sustainable electrification marketplace. So those are the 5 major barriers we're seeing. Those are the 3 areas that we're working in to try to address those. I look forward to the rest of the conversation.
Wow. So Panama, that is extremely helpful for you to outline it in such clear language. And it really helps us think about the priorities of what we need to do. We need to make sure, again, that people are aware of this issue. And this panel is designed to help spread that word. The customer value proposition, Maria is probably saying, wow, I really appreciate going after Panama as opposed to you going after Sascha, because she is creating a business that also looks at the retrofits, not just the new buildings, because it is easier to do with new buildings, but retrofits are really tough. So Maria's going to share with us what BlocPower is doing, and then making money. So Maria, share with us how BlocPower is approaching this big challenge, and we look forward to your comments.
Thank you, Marianne. And hello, everyone. My name is Maria. I am the project operations manager at BlocPower. So I oversee and lead a team of project managers who develop and implement construction projects. So BlocPower is energy efficiency retrofits. At BlocPower, we're working to decarbonize buildings to make them smarter, healthier, and greener. And we're starting with low to moderate income communities. We generally in multifamily spaces, small commercial spaces, non-traditional spaces like houses of worship as well. We offer a turnkey solution to analyze efficiency upgrades to make in buildings, to provide the creative financing through facilities, institutional facilities like Goldman Sachs and Wall Street, to reduce these upfront costs and barriers to entry. And then we oversee and manage the construction of the project while developing workforce simultaneously and creating jobs. We also provide operation maintenance on systems and monitoring through IoT technology for 15 years for systems that we do install. So, we deal with a lot of barriers in our work in the actual implementation side. One of the biggest being cost. And the reason that BlocPower has created, this financial offering, we have seen the lessons of, like residential solar. We've seen all of the barriers to entry that people have when it comes to energy efficiency. It does cost money to make these upgrades, especially when you're dealing with buildings that have been really neglected and underserved over time. You need typically electrical infrastructure upgrades. A lot of the buildings need, a lot of remediation work, asbestos, mold removal, new roofing, and traditionally, financing options, you need a certain amount of credit score. You need to check all of the boxes. If the building is in a certain condition, it won't apply. So BlocPower is really trying to provide a solution that reduces that upfront cost and includes, not just a small portion of clean energy, but includes all of the measures that are needed in order to electrify properly and do it in the areas that are in most of need. And that is really one of the bigger barriers to entry: poor infrastructure, expensive upfront costs. So we have a lease offering. We have different facilities provided by institutional companies like Goldman Sachs. We have our own crowdfunding facility that we've raised between just regular people, different companies that we can deploy creatively to electrify every building across the United States. So what we do is we offer a lease solution which amortizes the upfront capital cost over 15 years. So building owners pay a monthly rate and really are able to take advantage of these types of upgrades in energy efficiency. The other barriers that we see in the implementation side are, not only is it expensive, but there are not that many contractors on the other side of this to do the work. And we need to scale very rapidly. We have to decarbonize every building. We have to replace old boilers and fuel systems with smart heating and cooling. We do a lot of our work in New York, do a lot of work in Oakland and California. So dealing with a lot of different types of diverse buildings and systems. And the contractor network, is really still like an old, antiquated, network where it's really hard to find good contractors who are willing to electrify, who believe in it, who are bought into it, who won't push you the quickest and easiest solution, which might just be a gas-to-gas replacement. And so one of the challenges that we face is, building those partnerships, expanding as we go with contractors across the country, and really having partners who believe in this vision, who are willing to invest in it, and grow their workforce accordingly, because there's just simply not enough people to do the work right now. So BlocPower has several different workforce development programs. We have one in partnership with the City of New York. We have one in Oakland as well. And it's part of the way that we work is we build partnerships, and we take qualified candidates from the communities that we are building these retrofits in, have them learn skills that they can actually acquire good paying jobs, and then help to place them on our electrification projects. So it's really like a circular benefit to the community that they're serving, to us, to at the policy level, to understand like how we can invest in our communities while also investing in clean energy. So workforce is definitely another barrier. And then just lastly, engagement and time. We generally when a heating system goes out, it's between every 10 to 15 years, maybe earlier if you're not lucky. And really, you have that one chance in a decade to do the decarbonization work and electrify, and then it's gone. So we need to quickly, like Panama said, engage and spread mass awareness on this issue. One of the things that we're doing is utilizing and leveraging technology and data to both identify and target buildings that are in need of upgrades, but also analyze and propose what types of upgrades can be used, and then take that in partnership with local governments and cities. We are in partnership with the city of Ithaca to decarbonize every single building in the city, and that will be the framework and blueprint for how we do this across the country, through data, through technology, to allow us to actually enter these spaces, partner with local municipalities, people who are organized and on the ground in these areas, and do that work. So it's a really, it is a lot of work that we need to do very quickly. But yeah, we're up for the challenge.
That's amazing. So Therese Pepper just put into the chat that BlocPower was ranked #4 on Fast Company's 2022 Most Innovative Companies list worldwide. So congratulations on being part of that revolutionary business model. It's really exciting. I know you mentioned supply chain in terms of people. It's not just the physical supply chain, but it's the workforce. And one of the things when we think about the workforce in the building sector is there's a lot of people retiring, and we need to really bring in a large set of new trades folks that understand the opportunity here and the importance of this. And I'm curious, Sascha and Panama, about your sense about diversity, disadvantaged communities, and workforce, because this is not, it's not rocket science, but it's close. This technology Sascha gave us a landscape view of all the technical challenges. We are looking at how do we, today's HVAC service technicians have no idea what this is. Why do we want to do these retrofits to heat pumps? They're like, what is a heat pump? How does it work? How do I size it? How do I control it? How do I pay for it? Sascha, any thoughts on that?
Sure. Yes. I mean, for starters, with the Oakland Eco Block, we did choose as a pilot site a really diverse community, not particularly high income, also culturally diverse, 7 different languages spoken. Wow. We want the model to become accessible and sensible for very low income communities as well. There's sort of a bit of a tension with, you're asking participants in the pilot to really commit themselves and jump into the pool. And that's difficult for people to do if there's more financial insecurity. But, you mentioned the jobs piece. I think that the real opportunity here is to just get more of a sense of ownership of energy and sustainability infrastructure, and for people to become excited about it. One of the aspects of our EcoBlock project has been really dedicated and continuing outreach with newsletters and meetings and just educating people about, the choices that are out there. And it includes water efficiency too. We had laundry to landscape workshop that was really hands-on. And so I think if we have many blocks like this sprouting up, it becomes sort of a point of interest of, wow, I could work on this. And I could, learn a technical trade or study ways to participate in this energy transition, the sense that this is for and by all of us, not something that comes from government far away.
Thank you. So Panama, how do you think about the workforce? Is that related to making money or supply chain? And tell us a little about how you're approaching that topic.
Yeah, I've been called a bit of a curmudgeon on the workforce issues as it relates to building decarbonization. Ultimately, it depends on your paradigm about how you think we're going to meet our climate goals. And the appliances that we deal with, water heating, space heating, cooking, clothes drying appliances, I mean, that's what uses gas in buildings. By and large, people don't think about those technologies. They're not inspired by those technologies, besides the stove. And they're not going to be, most of them are not going to be replaced until they're broken. There's not going to be, I believe, a large percentage of the population that is going to replace well-functioning equipment before the end of its useful life. There will be that, 5, maybe 10% that are incredibly climate concerned that'll go ahead and do it. But I think most of those are going to be replaced on failure. And so if they're replaced on failure, they were going to be replaced anyway, whether that be with a gas alternative or an electric alternative. And so if they're going to be replaced anyway, we're not creating any new demand from electrification if they're just going to be replaced on failure. The opportunities are, can we get people to retire equipment early, or some of the upgrades that Maria talked about, the electrical panel upgrades, the wiring? That's the opportunity for some new work coming from electrification. So for me, with the current workforce, this is all about how do we send them the right signals to begin to start to transition their businesses away from gas over to electric installation. And I agree, it's not rocket science. I mean, a heat pump is basically an air conditioner that can run in reverse. If you install an air conditioner, you can install a heat pump. A heat pump water heater is a tank of water with an R2D2 unit on top. I mean, this is not complicated stuff to be able to install, but you don't have a lot of installers actually doing it.
Yeah.
The issue you brought up though about retirement, that's the wave of opportunity coming, is that we have a massive retirement boom coming for installers, for heating and water heating installers. And that's going to be our big opportunity to think about, how do we incentivize the existing businesses that work in this space to be able to hire new people and hire people from different communities than they've hired from in the past. And so what are the programs we can put in place? I think rather than electrification, the retirement boom is what's going to really drive new people coming into this industry.
That's great. So I think about the students that we may have joining us today and how they can get involved. And I want to, Maria, if you could talk a little about how BlocPower, the kinds of people you hire and how you think about, your profession. Then I'm going to go to the lightning round where you all get 2 minutes sort of to talk about what you're most excited about. But Maria, if you think about, tell us a little about the way you're structured, the kinds of people you hire. And I know you mentioned the challenges of the local HVAC technicians. But if you can talk a little about how your company's structured and opportunities for careers in that space.
Certainly. In terms of BlocPower, I think we are a little over 50 now, though we employ, I think, 700 people through our workforce development program in New York. And so there's all different types of pathways. We have actually placed people directed through the program as full-time employees at BlocPower. We've placed them into partner contractors as part of their crews and, being HVAC technicians themselves. In terms of pathways, into the type of people we hire at BlocPower, generally we are a diverse group of people. I think we come from all different types of areas. We're all very passionate about climate change and giving back to the communities. We're New York based and work in California. I think that having the climate tech background, having a policy background is very helpful. We're always looking for like-minded people who want to accelerate clean energy adoption kind of at all costs. We are always hiring for interns. I think in terms of like local on the ground market work, we really lean on partnerships and deep community building and relationships with those that we work with. And so when we work and engage partners, I think that's a really good pathway as well, is working with communities who are wanting to adopt climate agenda, want to use data, want to use technology. And so we're able to do so. So we have a large product team who works on our data and infrastructure at BlocPower technology. But we also have a large part of our team who are on the ground doing construction projects. And so these non-traditional pathways through workforce programs, through a construction arm are also lead people to us. So it's a bit broad. So I don't know if you want to.
No, that's great. That's great. It's impressive that it's 50 people now. And it's, I'm sure a lot of people are watching what you guys are doing and rooting for you to make this a sustainable, viable, successful business that grows and competes with the solar and battery industries that we were talking about earlier. So you guys all have now 1 minute lightning round on what you're excited. This is a 60-second, what you're most excited about, what gets you up in the morning, gets you inspired to sit at your Zoom window and watch the world and do what you do. So Sascha, let's start with you. What are you most excited about?
I'm most excited about seeing different people come together to work on the same problem and feel that sense of unity, that we're in this together. Mm-hmm. Climate change is the ultimate global collective problem, mm-hmm. right? We can't address it just individually or selfishly, because in fact, the most enlightened self-interest says we have to work together with everyone. And that includes our neighbors, our government, our electric utilities, other countries, and I think the unity, the global approach starts at home, and it starts with reaching across our fence to meet our neighbors and say, what can we do together?
Thank you.
And
I'm cutting you off. Okay, Panama.
I'm most excited about the fact that we're winning. And you don't hear that often in the climate world. We have 2 states in California and New York that represent 20% of gas demand in the United States. And they're both proposing to phase out the sale of all gas appliances beginning in 2030. You have the European Union announcing, as part of its effort to get off of Russian gas, an initiative to install 10 million heat pumps over the next 5 years. And so what we're seeing is we're finally seeing the policies that are going to be able to be at the scale and the speed to meet our climate goals. So that's what I'm really excited about.
Well, thank you. That's great to know that we're making progress, because it feels like it's a challenge, that it's a slog, an uphill battle, but good to see we've got some momentum. Maria.
I will build off of all of that. I think it's exciting just to feel the momentum that's there. We're having a lot of conversations on the policy level and the private level, public level, and everyone is engaged, involved, and now is the time. And so it's kind of go time. It's like time to implement, to execute, and that's exciting. There's a lot of challenges. There is a lot of barriers, but there's a lot of strong partnerships, and just being aligned and be able to look across the table and see where we coalesce, and how the things that we care about and our whys are all kind of in alignment. It's a very exciting moment, I think, in the space.
Well, thank you, Sascha, Panama, and Maria. This has been a wonderful panel, and I really appreciate the work you all 3 do. It's really, I think this was a great mix of technology, research, policy, and business. And I think we have the elements here of really a major impact on society and a major contribution towards decarbonization. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Way to end on
Agree.
time.
Yes, absolutely. Good job. Thank you so much to all of you. And thank you to Marianne for moderating so capably. Really appreciate all of your insights. And I agree, bringing these interdisciplinary perspectives to a problem like this is really essential. And as you highlighted, I think we here in California are in a good position to be able to take a leadership role in paving a way for new ideas and new strategies that could be replicated across the country.